a good amount of synchronization between the stick and the buttons. And when you're playing on your own, that's no problem at all. But when you're trying to do a triple rotate and also trying to get the exact movement.
Let's get a countdown here.
All right.
3, 2, 1, go! So you'll see them trying to do simple movements, like we were saying, because the coordination to moves that require precise timing between the joystick movements and the rotation are just too complicated to coordinate.
Yeah.
And you see Kevin and Aperture Grills taking a safe approach of keeping stacked very low. Over on Proto Magical Girl and McSky, they are stacking up, trying to get a little bit of speed.
Now, when it comes to cooperation, Kevin and Aperture Girls are absolutely totally fine with it. The two of them actually set the world record in Tetris Grandmaster 2's doubles mode, which is a cooperative mode. And Kevin since beat it by 1 second with a Japanese player in Japan, but they broke a 10-year-old record with their cooperation.
They are real-life roommates, and I've only had roommates for years at a time, and I have never been able to stand one, let alone be able to play Tetris with one after a year.
Aperture Girl says they've been friends for over a decade now, so.
To which Kevin said, wow.
Yeah, Proto thinks it's the ultimate test of a relationship, and she and Kai are up to that challenge.
So at this point, both groups are past level 100. As the gravity starts to increase, it's going to be interesting to see how the teams react to this. One of the major things as the gravity gets higher is piece mobility, and that starts to require a lot of synchronization between the stick and the buttons. So let's see how they react as the gravity gets higher.
Particularly if they manage to break level 500, it's going to get very difficult because that's when the gravity goes instant.
Yeah, and when the gravity goes instant, you're going to rely a lot more on synchronized movements, which obviously isn't so possible when you have two people at the controls.
Right, and you notice right now they're stacking relatively flat, but as the speed increases, they'll start to stack with the center columns a bit higher, which will help with the piece mobility because you do get about 30 frames to maneuver the piece before it locks down automatically.
But if the piece falls down, that timer resets.
True. So they are pretty close. It looks like Kevin and Aperture Girls are slightly ahead.
They've just reached 200, so the speed curve is resetting for them, but only for a very brief period of time.
Yeah, at about 30 levels, it picks back up and then very quickly gets faster than you've experienced yet in the game.
Both teams with a relatively clean stack, a misdrop on Kevin and Aperture Girls' side, but it's very fixable.
Oh, and they're going to do a sweet J-tuck, or L-tuck there.
That is a wonderful maneuver. Now, one thing that's worth noting is that there's a short buffering time between each piece in this game. And as the gravity gets higher, they're going to make a lot of use of that. So you can buffer both movements and rotations. Ideally, they'll be using placement techniques that only require movement with the stick and simple rotations that you can do in the buffering time.
Yeah, if you can place pieces without even having to rotate them, that is the easiest thing, because then it's only up to one player to do the work.
This buffer time is also about half a second long, so with a single person, obviously your brain is going to work that fast, but with two people, you have to be able to communicate this move while this time is up or while the piece is dropping.
And as the gravity increases, communicating while the piece is dropping increasingly becomes less of an option.
Right, yeah, and now Kevin and Aperture Girls have reached 300, which the speed starts to go very fast at that point. We call it in the community awkward G because it varies from 2G to 5G at this point up until 500. And so you're never quite sure exactly what moves are possible. Sometimes you get caught, sometimes you make it over a gap.
And to elaborate, a G is 1 cell per frame. So at this point, if it's at 5G, you might not even be able to get the piece all the way to the side before it's hit your stack.
Now, looking over at Proto and Kai, you can actually see Kai pointing at the screen as to where they intend to place pieces. It's a very useful technique that you can do because you only need to put one hand on the controller.
And it especially helps aid the communication when you are short on time, so getting those words out is a problem.
Right.
You can see on Kevin and Aperture Grill's side right now that they are using a lot more of the lock delay, or the time before a piece actually locks when it hits the stack, to figure out where they're actually going to put the piece.
Oh, I think they were on a pretty big eye drought there, but they seem to have made it past. You also notice that they are stacking the column 9 quite a bit lower from the rest of their stack, and that is to aid the rotation of the eyepiece into that Tetris well. The way the pieces move here, there's no floor kicks to raise up that eyepiece, so it can be very frustrating to new players when they try to rotate an eyepiece into a Tetris well, and they just can't.
And learning how the eyepiece operates is really one of the biggest parts of learning TGM, because it definitely operates different from the rest of the pieces.
Yeah, the eyepiece rotates along what is essentially its third column. So if you were to rotate it and there was nothing in the way, it'll rotate along the third column. What that means is if you want to rotate it down the right side, you need a 2x2 square, basically, in order to fit it in. But if you want to do it on the left, you need a 3x2.
Yeah, and that's the reason why it's almost exclusively done for a right side Tetris well. Proto and Kai are running into a bit of trouble here.
They're hanging in there, but it's looking pretty dire.
And this is going to be the one.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah, with that.
Nice work to Proto and Kai. Congratulations. Making it to 421 is quite an accomplishment.
Extremely impressive.
Meanwhile, Kevin and Aperture have just crossed the threshold into 20G.
And I think that they may have met all of the GM requirements to this point.
They have.
However, at this point, the game is now at its hardest level, so it's going to...
Yes!
Oh, that was a wonderful move that takes so much synchronization. I'm honestly surprised they attempted it.
Yeah, same.
At this
And they're
point,
going to tuck that T underneath. Ooh.
It's also worth noting that this mode will actually put a lot more strain on the person controlling the stick than it does the person controlling the buttons. The person controlling the stick actually has to press down to manually lock pieces in on every single piece, because if you don't do that, you're not going to get the time requirement to get GM.
Yeah, they do have a couple of holes in the stack, but they have a nice pyramid shape. So even though they're stacking up a little bit higher, they're still pretty stable at this point.
And they're even getting down to those.
Sometimes it's worth it to just stack over difficult holes and try to just clear back down and hopefully get them later.
Nice
Wonderful
T-spin.
So it's worth noting they couldn't get that eyepiece over to the left in that case because they didn't have the needed space for it to rotate. So they had to opt for a column or close to the center of the stack. And you have to make those decisions on the fly, because if you make the attempt to get it over there and then you fail, you've just made a much larger mess to clean up than if you had placed it somewhere in the center.
Oh, getting some really nice down stacking there. Oh, a nice J teleport. And a great skim.
They've been doing a lot of complicated overhangs, but are actually very simple to execute. So if you know how to set them up, it's a really nice maneuver to use.
Oh, and getting a Tetris.
So at this point, I'm hearing a lot of communication between them, but sometimes it's not even directions. They'll say something just like skim, and generally they'll know what's happening, like where to put it, because in some ways, while there are many places to put a piece, there are only a few smart places to put a piece. So then many players will just automatically gravitate towards that spot.
Yeah, when you get to this level, I mean, when we watch each other's games. Yes.
They're going to need a bailout from the RNG, and they didn't get it. No. But a 752 from Kevin and Aperture Grills.
That's
amazing.
incredible.
An amazing run.